The Capitol Records tower on Vine Street was 13 stories of concrete and glass shaped like a stack of records. Studio A sat on the ground floor, soundproofed walls thick enough to swallow a scream. Frank Sinatra stood at the microphone, headphones around his neck, white shirt open at the collar. The clock on the wall said 11:43 p.m. They'd been recording since 8. Nelson Riddle sat in the control booth with the engineers, looking at the arrangement sheets spread across the console. 42 musicians had gone home an hour ago. Now it was just Sinatra, Riddle, 2 engineers, and the song that wouldn't come together. One More for My Baby had taken 11 takes. None of them worked. Not technically. Technically, they were perfect. Sinatra's pitch was flawless. The timing was exact. The engineers had balanced everything correctly, but something was missing. Alan Livingston pushed through the studio door at 11:47 p.m. He was the president of Capitol Records, 43 years old, expensive suit, the kind of smile that never reached his eye. Behind him came 2 men in darker suits who didn't introduce themselves. Sinatra looked at Riddle through the control booth glass. Riddle shrugged. "Frank," Livingston said, walking toward the microphone, "we need to talk about the album." Sinatra took off the headphones, set them on the music stand. "We're working. I can see that. How many takes?" 11. And we'll keep going until it's right." Livingston stopped 3 feet from the microphone. "Frank, the album was due last week. We've pushed the release date twice. The marketing campaign starts Monday. We need to wrap this tonight. We'll wrap when it's done. That's what I want to talk about." Livingston glanced back at the 2 men by the door. "We've been reviewing the sessions. The material it's dark, Frank, very dark. Torch songs, ballads, nothing upbeat, nothing radio-friendly." Sinatra looked at him. "That's the album. I understand that's your vision, but we have concerns about commercial viability, so we'd like to make some adjustments." "What kind of adjustments?" "We'd like to add 3 tracks, upbeat numbers. Come Fly With Me, maybe. Something from the Swing Easy session. Something that'll get airplay." Sinatra didn't move. "This is a concept album. I know that, and it's brilliant. But it needs balance. It needs to be what it is." Livingston's smile tightened. "Frank, I'm trying to help you here. The sales projections on a 45-minute album of sad songs are not good. The radio stations won't touch half these tracks. We're looking at disappointing numbers, and that affects your next contract, your advance, everything. So you want me to change it. I want us to be smart. Add 3 tracks, upbeat tracks, that's all. The rest stays exactly as is." Sinatra walked to the control booth window. Riddle was watching through the glass, very still. "Nelson," Sinatra said, his voice carrying through the studio, "how many arrangements did you write for this album?" Riddle pressed the talkback button. 16. "How many did we use?" 12. "Why 12? Riddle hesitated. Then, because 12 told the story. Sinatra turned back to Livingston. 12 songs, that's the album. "Frank, please, let's be reasonable here. I'm offering a compromise. You get your concept album, I get something I can sell. Everybody wins. Except the album. The album will be fine." "No," Sinatra said. "It'll be something else. It'll be half a concept and half filler. It'll be neither one thing nor another." Livingston's smile disappeared. "Frank, I'm not asking. I'm the president of this label. I have final approval on all releases. And I'm telling you professionally, respectfully, that this album needs 3 more tracks or it doesn't come out." The studio went very quiet. One of the engineers reached toward the recording console, then thought better of it and pulled his hand back. "Nelson," Sinatra said, still looking at Livingston, "pack up the arrangements." Riddle's voice came through the talkback. "Frank, pack them up. We're done for tonight. Frank, we can finish this. 1 more take, maybe 2. We're done." Sinatra walked to the studio door. He didn't look at Livingston. He didn't look at the 2 men in suits. He just walked. "Frank, wait." Livingston followed him. "Where are you going?" "Home. We're in the middle of a session. You can't just—" Sinatra stopped at the door. He turned around. He looked at Livingston for 5 seconds. Then he looked at Riddle through the control booth glass. Then he looked at the microphone standing alone in the middle of the studio, the headphones draped over the music stand. "Tell me something, Alan," Sinatra said. His voice was quiet, conversational. "Why'd you sign me to Capitol?" "Because you're Frank Sinatra." "And what does that mean?" "It means you're the best singer in America. It means you sell records. It means I make the records I want to make." Sinatra opened the door. "Or I don't make them at all." He walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Alan Livingston stood in the middle of Studio A, looking at the door. Nelson Riddle came out of the control booth. He started gathering the arrangement sheets, stacking them carefully, not looking at anyone. "Nelson," Livingston said, "is he coming back?" "No, no, just like that. Just like that. We have a contract. We have studio time booked. We have an album 75% finished." "You have 12 songs," Riddle said, still stacking paper. 12 perfect songs. You could release it tomorrow and it would be the best album Capitol puts out this year. But it's not commercial. It's not radio-friendly. It's Frank Sinatra's album," Riddle said, "not yours." He picked up the stack of arrangements, put them in his leather case, and walked toward the door. "Nelson, wait. We can work this out. We can." Riddle stopped. "Mr. Livingston, I've arranged for Sinatra for 6 years. I've done 12 albums with him, and I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty." "What's that?" "When Frank Sinatra walks out of a studio, he's not negotiating. He's done." Riddle left. The two engineers started shutting down the equipment without being asked. They'd worked enough sessions to know when one was over. Here's what Alan Livingston didn't understand. Frank Sinatra wasn't protecting 12 songs. He was protecting something bigger. The album was called Only the Lonely. 12 songs about loss, regret, loneliness, and the 3 a.m. darkness when sleep won't come and memories won't leave. It was personal. It was raw. It was the most honest thing Sinatra had ever recorded, and Livingston wanted to add "Come Fly With Me." To Sinatra, that wasn't compromise. That was vandalism. It was putting jokes in a funeral. It was painting bright colors on a black and white photograph. It was destroying the thing to save it, and Sinatra would rather have no album than that album. Alan Livingston called Mickey Rudin the next morning at 9 a.m. "Mickey, we need to resolve this situation." "I'm listening." Frank walked out of a recording session last night. "We're 3 tracks short of a complete album. The release date is in 6 weeks. Marketing has already started. We need him back in the studio." "What are you offering?" "I'm offering to forget the whole thing happened. He comes back, we finish the album, everybody moves on. With the 3 extra tracks." "Silence, Alan. We need something radio-friendly, Mickey. The album as it stands won't get airplay. The stations want." "I'll talk to Frank." Livingston exhaled. "Thank you. I appreciate. But I can tell you right now what he's going to say." "What's that?" "No." Mickey Rudin hung up. "He called Sinatra at noon." "Frank," Livingston called. "He wants you back in the studio. To add 3 tracks." "He didn't say that specifically. He said to finish the album, which means add 3 tracks." "Probably." "Then no." "Frank, think about this. The album's almost done. Beautiful work. Nelson's arrangements are stunning. Do you really want to walk away from it?" Sinatra didn't answer for a moment. Then, "Mickey, ask me the right question." "What's the right question?" "The right question is, do I want to release something I don't believe in just because it's easier than fighting?" "Okay, do you?" "No, even if it means Capitol shelves the album." "Even then, Frank." "Mickey, I'll make another album. I'll make 10 more albums. But I won't make this one wrong." Rudin sat there holding the phone. "All right," he said finally. "I'll call him back. Tell him 12 songs, that's the album. He releases it or he doesn't, his choice." Rudin called Livingston at 2 p.m. "Frank's position is 12 songs. Take it or leave it." "That's not a position. That's an ultimatum. Call it whatever you want." "Mickey, be reasonable. We've invested significant money in this project. Studio time, musicians, engineering, marketing. We need something we can sell." "You have something you can sell. 12 songs by Frank Sinatra, arranged by Nelson Riddle. That's better than 90% of what's on the market. It's not commercial." "Maybe, maybe not, but it's what Frank's offering, and if you don't want it, he'll take it somewhere else. He has a contract with Capitol. For albums, not for this album. He can record Only the Lonely at Columbia, or RCA, or Verve, whoever wants it." Livingston went quiet. "You're saying he'd walk away from Capitol." "I'm saying he'd walk away from this fight. If Capitol won't release the album the way it is, someone else will." "Let me think about it." "You've got 48 hours, Rudin said. "After that, Frank starts talking to other labels." Alan Livingston spent 2 days on the phone. He called the head of marketing. They ran the numbers. Torch ballads didn't sell like swing. Radio wouldn't touch half the tracks. The album would do maybe 60,000 copies in the first quarter. He called his boss at EMI. His boss said, If Sinatra wants to make an uncommercial album, let him, but don't expect it to save his career. He called 3 radio programmers. All 3 said the same thing: too depressing, too slow, not enough single. On the 3rd day, he called Mickey Rudin. All right, 12 song, we'll release it as is. Smart decision, but I want one thing in return. What's that? If this album flops, and I think it will, Frank doesn't fight me on the next one. I get full creative input. He does some upbeat material. He does what the market wants. I'll ask him. Rudin called Sinatra. Livingston agreed to 12 song, but he wants creative input on the next album if this one flops. Define flop. Sales under 75,000 in the first year. Sinatra laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Tell him yes. Really? Tell him yes. And tell him he won't need to worry about it. Only the Lonely was released on September 15, 1958. No singles, no radio push, minimal marketing. It sold 120,000 copies in the first month. By Christmas, it had moved 400,000. By the end of 1959, it was certified gold. 1 million copies sold. It stayed on the Billboard charts for 120 weeks, 2.5 years. It became one of the most influential albums of the 1950s. Critics called it a masterpiece. Other singers tried to copy it. The concept album, telling a story across multiple songs, became a format unto itself, and Capitol Records made a fortune. Alan Livingston never asked for creative input on another Sinatra album. Nelson Riddle told this story once, in a private conversation in 1974, to a young arranger who asked him about working with Sinatra. What was he like in the studio? Riddle thought for a moment. Uncompromising. In a good way. In every way. Riddle sipped his drink. Most singers, you can negotiate with them. You can say, what about trying it this way? And they'll try it. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't, but they'll try. And Sinatra knew exactly what he wanted. And if you tried to change it, he'd look at you like you'd suggested painting a mustache on the Mona Lisa. That sounds difficult. It was terrifying, Riddle said, and exhilarating. Because when you got it right, when you gave him exactly what he'd heard in his head, he'd look at you and nod, just once. And that nod meant more than all the compliments I've ever received. Did he ever compromise? Riddle smiled. Once. I wanted to add 4 bars to the bridge of Angel Eyes. I thought it needed more space. Frank said no, I pushed. He said no again, I pushed harder, and he said, and I'll never forget this, he said, Nelson, you're right, it does need more space, but not there. And he showed me where, and he was right. So he did compromise. No, Riddle said. He corrected me, there's a difference. Alan Livingston stayed at Capitol Records until 1967. He oversaw the releases of dozens of albums by Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole, and the Beach Boys. He made the label millions. But he never forgot Studio A in 1981. He was interviewed for a documentary about the music industry. The interviewer asked him about the biggest mistake he'd ever made as an executive. Livingston thought for a long time before answering. I tried to tell Frank Sinatra how to make a Frank Sinatra album, he said. What was wrong with that? Everything. Livingston looked older than his years. I thought I knew what the market wanted. I thought I understood radio programmers and sales projections and demographics. And I did. I understood all of that. So I didn't understand that none of it mattered. What mattered was that Frank Sinatra was making something true, and truth always finds an audience. Eventually. Did he know that? Livingston smiled. He knew it before I did. That's why he walked out. Here's what happened in Studio A that night. A man was asked to compromise his vision for commercial consideration. He said no, not because he was confident the album would sell, not because he knew it would become a classic, but because compromising the vision meant destroying the thing itself, and he'd rather have nothing than something false. That's not stubbornness. That's artistic integrity, and artistic integrity looks like arrogance until it's proven right. Then it looks like genius. 3 months after the album was released, Frank Sinatra ran into Alan Livingston at Chasen's restaurant. Livingston was with his wife, celebrating the album going gold. Sinatra walked over to their table. Alan, Frank, congratulations. The album it's extraordinary. You were right, I was wrong. Sinatra looked at him for a moment. You weren't wrong, Sinatra said. You were safe, there's a difference. Then he walked away. Livingston sat there with his wife, staring at his drink. What did he mean by that? His wife asked. Livingston thought about it. He meant I would have sold 100,000 copies of an album nobody remembered. He sold 1,000,000 copies of an album nobody will forget. Is that better? For him, yes, for me. Livingston smiled, but it was sad. I guess I'll never know. So here's what you need to ask yourself. Was Frank Sinatra right to walk out of that studio? Or was he just lucky that the album succeeded? Because if Only the Lonely had flopped, if it had sold 20,000 copies instead of 1,000,000, would we call him an artist? Or would we call him stubborn? The truth is, Sinatra didn't know the album would be a hit. He just knew it was honest. He knew it was complete. He knew it said what he needed to say. And he was willing to lose everything to say it correctly. Maybe that's what separates artists from entertainers. Entertainers give the audience what it wants. Artists give the audience something true. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the audience realizes those are the same thing. Would you have added the 3 tracks, or would you have walked?